Rob Reiner's story is often told as a smooth Hollywood success, but the truth is more layered and more interesting than it first appears. Born on March 6, 1947, in the Bronx, New York, Rob grew up in a world where comedy and creativity were part of daily life. His father, Carl Reiner, was already becoming a major figure in American entertainment, best known for his work on The Dick Van Dyke Show. From an early age, Rob was surrounded by writers, performers, and comedians who treated storytelling as both an art and a responsibility. That environment shaped how he saw the world. Expectations followed him everywhere, not because anyone forced them on him, but because the Reiner name already carried weight. Instead of running from that pressure, Rob slowly learned how to work within it. He attended UCLA's film school, where he began learning not just how to act, but how stories are built, shaped, and delivered to an audience. By the late 1960s, he was already appearing on television, taking small roles on shows like The Andy Griffith Show, Batman, and The Beverly Hillbillies. These early appearances were not glamorous, but they were important. They taught him discipline, timing, and how television really worked behind the scenes. His film debut came in 1967 in Enter Laughing, a movie directed by his father, followed by roles in Halls of Anger and Where's Papa. While his acting career was growing, Rob was quietly expanding his skills in another direction. Inspired by Carl Reiner, he moved into writing and earned a place on the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour, where he worked alongside emerging talents like Steve Martin. That experience sharpened his understanding of political humor and social commentary. Everything changed in 1971 when Rob Reiner was cast as Michael "Meathead" Stivic on All in the Family. The show was unlike anything television audiences had seen before. It tackled racism, sexism, war, religion, and social change head-on, often in uncomfortable ways. Rob's character represented younger, progressive ideals, constantly clashing with Archie Bunker's old-school mindset. These arguments were loud, emotional, and sometimes messy, but they reflected real conversations happening in American homes at the time. Michael Stivic was not written as a perfect hero. He could be arrogant, stubborn, and self-righteous, which made him feel real. The nickname Meathead became one of the most famous running jokes in television history, symbolizing not just an insult, but a deeper generational divide. As the show grew more popular, it climbed to the top of the ratings and stayed there for years, creating multiple spin-offs and reshaping what sitcoms were allowed to talk about. Rob appeared for 8 seasons before choosing to leave. His decision surprised many people, especially since the franchise continued without him. When the spin-off, Gloria, was developed, the writers explained Michael's absence by having him leave to join a commune, closing the chapter on the character. Rob's time on All in the Family made him a household name, but it also taught him something important. He did not want to stay in one place forever. He had learned how powerful storytelling could be, and he was ready to take control of it himself. After stepping away from All in the Family, Rob Reiner continued acting, but it became increasingly clear that his real passion was behind the camera. He had spent years watching how great television was made, and he wanted to shape stories rather than just perform in them. That shift led to one of the most impressive directing careers in modern Hollywood. His directorial debut came in 1984 with This Is Spinal Tap, a mockumentary that followed a fictional rock band on tour. The film was risky, strange, and unlike anything audiences had seen before. At first, It confused some viewers, but over time, it became a cult classic and one of the most quoted comedies ever made. What made Spinal Tap special was its realism. Many musicians said it felt uncomfortably accurate, and that honesty gave the film its power. Rob proved with one movie that he understood satire, character, and tone at a deep level. Just 2 years later, he shocked audiences again by directing Stand By Me, a coming-of-age drama based on a Stephen King story. The film followed 4 boys on a journey to find a missing body, but at its heart, it was about friendship, loss, and growing up. It showed a completely different side of Rob Reiner's talent. Critics and audiences realized he was not a one-genre director. Then came a run of films that few directors in history can match. In 1987, he directed The Princess Bride, a fantasy adventure filled with humor, romance, and unforgettable characters. The movie was not an immediate blockbuster, but over time, it became a beloved classic, passed down from generation to generation. In 1989, Rob followed it with When Harry Met Sally, one of the most influential romantic comedies ever made. The film explored love, friendship, and timing with honesty and humor, changing how romantic movies were written. That same year marked a turning point in Rob Reiner's personal life as well. But even beyond romance, his films shared something deeper. They believed in conversation, in human connection, and in the idea that people can change. Rob continued directing successful films like Misery, A Few Good Men, and The American President, each one showing his ability to handle different tones while keeping characters at the center. His work helped define what smart, adult storytelling looked like in mainstream cinema. He wasn't chasing spectacle, he was chasing truth. At the same time, Rob became more outspoken about politics and social issues. Just like All in the Family, Barren Policy. Years earlier, his voice reflected his beliefs, sometimes drawing praise and sometimes criticism. But whether people agreed with him or not, it was clear that Rob Reiner saw storytelling as a way to engage with the world, not escape it. His films became part of American culture, quoted, debated, and revisited decades later. By the 1990s, he was no longer just Carl Reiner's son or meathead from television. He was a filmmaker whose work had shaped generations of viewers. Behind the success, Rob Reiner's personal life was going through its own changes. He had been married to Penny Marshall for 10 years before their divorce. And during that marriage, he adopted her daughter, Tracy. After the divorce, Rob spent nearly a decade single, focusing on work while privately dealing with emotional uncertainty. During the production of When Harry Met Sally, something unexpected happened. Rob met Michelle Singer, and that meeting quietly changed his outlook on love and relationships. At the time, the original script for the movie did not include a traditional happy ending. Harry and Sally were not meant to end up together. But as Rob's real life began to shift, so did the story he was telling. Love no longer felt like a theory or a question. It felt possible. Writer Nora Ephron had modeled Harry after Rob himself, a divorced man trying to understand connection and timing. As art began to mirror life, the film's ending changed, giving audiences one of the most iconic conclusions in romantic comedy history. Rob and Michelle eventually married, and their relationship became a stabilizing force in his life. As the years passed, Rob Reiner's career slowed compared to his peak years, But his influence did not fade. His earlier work continued to shape filmmakers, writers, and audiences. Younger generations discovered The Princess Bride and Stand By Me for the first time, finding new meaning in stories made decades earlier. Rob's legacy is not just about box office numbers or awards. It's about courage. He took risks when success was not guaranteed. He changed genres, challenged norms, and trusted audiences to think and feel. While some people focus on controversy or public opinions, the deeper truth is that Rob Reiner helped redefine what entertainment could be. He proved that comedy could confront serious issues, that romance could be honest, and that stories rooted in humanity never really age. His life is not a tragedy or a mystery, but a long journey shaped by curiosity, conviction, and creative courage. And when you look back at his body of work, one thing becomes clear. Rob Reiner didn't just reflect the culture around him, he helped shape it. Rob Reiner's life often looks simple from the outside, like a straight road to success, but when you look closely, it becomes much more complex and human. He was born on March 6, 1947, in the Bronx, New York, into a world already filled with creativity, comedy, and strong opinions. His father, Carl Reiner, was not just another entertainer. He was one of the most respected comedy minds in American television, especially known for his work on The Dick Van Dyke Show. Growing up in that environment meant Rob was surrounded by writers, actors, and comedians who believed that humor mattered. Comedy was not treated as something light or careless. It was treated as a way to speak about society, values, and people's daily lives. From a very young age, Rob learned that stories could make people laugh, but they could also make them think. At the same time, having a famous last name came with pressure. No one had to say it out loud. Rob knew that people would always wonder if he was talented on his own or simply benefiting from his father's reputation. Instead of running from that pressure, he accepted it quietly and focused on learning. He attended UCLA's film school, where he didn't just study acting. He studied how stories are built, how scenes are shaped, and how emotions are created through words, timing, and silence. During the late 1960s, Rob began appearing in small television roles on shows like The Andy Griffith Show, Batman, and The Beverly Hillbillies. These roles were short and sometimes forgettable, but they were important training. They taught him discipline, patience, and how television actually worked behind the camera. His first film role came in Enter Laughing, directed by his father. Some people quietly questioned whether Rob was being handed opportunities, but he kept working without responding to criticism. More roles followed, including Halls of Anger and Where's Papa, and slowly he began to find his own voice. At the same time, he moved into writing, earning a place on the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. That show was bold and political, pushing boundaries during a time of social unrest in America. Working there exposed Rob to sharp political humor and taught him how comedy could challenge authority and reflect public frustration. Then, in 1971, Rob Reiner's life changed completely when he was cast as Michael Meathead Stivic on All in the Family. The show was different from anything television had seen before. It didn't avoid sensitive topics. It confronted them directly. Racism, sexism, war, religion, and generational conflict were no longer hidden behind jokes. They were placed at the center of the conversation. Rob's character, Michael, represented younger progressive ideas, constantly arguing with Archie Bunker's traditional and often offensive views. These arguments were loud, emotional, and uncomfortable, but they reflected real discussions happening in American homes. Michael was not perfect. He could be stubborn, arrogant, and overly confident, which made him feel real rather than heroic. The nickname Meathead became famous not just as an insult, but as a symbol of a divided America. The show became a massive success, topping ratings for years and creating several spin-offs. Rob Reiner became a household name, but as successful as the show was, he began to feel restless. After 8 seasons, he made a decision that surprised many people. He left the show. Walking away from something so popular was risky, but Rob knew he didn't want to spend his life playing one character. He wanted to tell stories, not just perform in them. After leaving All in the Family, Rob Reiner continued acting for a short time, but it became clear that his real passion was directing. He had spent years watching how great television was made, learning how scenes were shaped and how audiences responded to honesty. Stepping behind the camera was not an easy move. Many actors struggle when they try to direct, and failure was a real possibility. Rob's first major directing project was This Is Spinal Tap in 1984. The film was unusual. It was a mockumentary about a fictional rock band, shot in a loose, improvised style that confused audiences at first. Studios didn't know how to market it, and some viewers weren't sure if it was real or fake. But over time, something interesting happened. Musicians began saying the film felt painfully accurate. The humor came from truth, not exaggeration. Slowly, Spinal Tap became a cult classic and one of the most quoted comedies ever made. With one film, Rob proved he understood satire, tone, and character at a deep level. Then, he surprised everyone again by directing Stand By Me, a serious, coming-of-age story based on a Stephen King novella. The film followed 4 boys searching for a missing body, but at its heart, it was about friendship, fear, and the moment when childhood ends. The movie was emotional, quiet, and deeply human. It showed that Rob Reiner was not limited to comedy. What followed was one of the strongest directing runs in Hollywood history. The Princess Bride blended fantasy, romance, and humor in a way that felt timeless. It wasn't a massive hit when it was released, but over the years, it became a beloved classic, passed down from parents to children. When Harry Met Sally changed romantic comedies forever by focusing on conversation and honesty instead of fantasy. Films like Misery, A Few Good Men, and The American President showed Rob's ability to handle suspense, drama, and political themes without losing emotional balance. What connected all of these films was not spectacle. It was belief in people talking, listening, and changing. Rob wasn't interested in loud visuals. He was interested in truth. As his career grew, he also became more vocal about politics and social issues. Some people praised him for speaking his mind, while others criticized him. But Rob never treated storytelling as a way to escape reality. For him, stories were a way to engage with it. By the 1990s, he was no longer seen as just Carl Reiner's son or the actor who played Meathead. He was a filmmaker whose work had shaped American culture. Behind the success and public recognition, Rob Reiner's personal life went through important changes. He was married to Penny Marshall for 10 years, and during that time, he adopted her daughter, Tracy. When the marriage ended, Rob entered a long period of emotional uncertainty. He focused heavily on work, using creativity as a way to move forward. During the production of When Harry Met Sally, something unexpected happened. Rob met Michelle Singer, and that meeting changed his outlook on love and relationships. At the time, the movie's script did not include a happy ending. Harry and Sally were not meant to end up together. But as Rob's real life changed, so did his understanding of connection. Love stopped feeling like a theory. It felt possible again. Writer Nora Ephron had modeled Harry after Rob himself, a divorced man trying to understand timing and emotional honesty. As art began to reflect life, the film's ending changed, creating one of the most famous conclusions in romantic comedy history. Rob eventually married Michelle, finding stability that grounded his later years. As time passed, his career slowed compared to his peak, but his influence never disappeared. Younger generations continued discovering his films, finding meaning in stories made decades earlier. Rob Reiner's legacy is not built on shock or scandal. It's built on courage, the courage to change genres, take risks, and trust audiences to think and feel. His work proved that comedy could address serious issues, that romance could be honest, and that stories rooted in humanity never grow old. Rob Reiner didn't just reflect the culture around him. Through patience, conviction, and creativity, he helped shape it.